Hey there, South Mississippi. Meteorologist Taylor Graham here, giving you an update on the weather this Tuesday afternoon. If you've even spent just 15 to 20 seconds outside, you know how incredibly hot it is. And even though the humidity is maybe just barely a little bit lower than some of the past few days, it's still pretty muggy outside. And in fact, we're going to be talking about near record or record-breaking heat pretty much all week long. So we better get used to this extreme heat over the next several days. It is summer and we expect it to be hot, but even this is a little excessive for us in South Mississippi. And again, we are dealing with near record heat over the next several days. And we'll go ahead and take a look at what our records are for today along the coast. We are seeing temperatures right now already in the upper 90s. Record high for Biloxi and Gulfport sits at 100. Moss Point's high sits at 99. And last I checked, we may have already broken that record for today, and we may even warm up a few more degrees. Our forecast high today has been 100. So I think we've got a pretty good shot of either setting or even breaking some of those record highs. And like I said, I believe we've already done that. It looks like near Moss Point. That's that Pascagoula sensor there. That's over at the Trent Lott International Airport. So temperatures across the board in the mid to upper 90s, triple digits already in some spots in Jackson County. And it's only 2 o'clock, so we still have a few hours left of this intense sunshine, and that will very likely heat us up even more. Of course, it's humid outside. We've seen the heat index close to 110 at times today. Even last we checked in Gulfport, it's coming in at 111, 116 in Gaucher, 115 over at Moss Point and Pascagoula. Even inland, we've got the heat index at 105. It's a little surprising we're not under an excessive heat warning, given that we are seeing the heat index so high. Usually when we get to 115, we'll start to see excessive heat warnings. That's not the case, but we're still under that heat advisory. And to be honest, no matter where you are, it is just incredibly hot. So not only are we under a heat advisory today, chances are we're going to be under that heat advisory again tomorrow. And I wouldn't be surprised if we had other heat alerts issued by the later part of this week as well. So this heat advisory goes until about 7 o'clock this evening. Even as we get closer to the sunset, it's still going to be very warm and muggy. We're really not seeing too much of a wind out there either, maybe just a tiny bit of a breeze out of the north and west, but we're really not looking at too much relief from the heat today whatsoever. Satellite and radar this afternoon, very quiet thanks to that big area of high pressure. We've got tons of sunshine out there. Looks like maybe one little shower right around the Pearlington area, but other than that, just not seeing a ton of rain. And just like the heat, we can get used to these dry conditions for quite some time. Now, it's a different story on the East Coast. They are still dealing with what is now Tropical Storm Debby, and even though it is technically weakened, it's causing some very significant flooding for parts of Georgia and the Carolinas, and now it even looks like some of those rain bands are moving up into Virginia at this point. But of course, Debby has not been our concern. We have high pressure that's moving in from the west. That's causing us to be incredibly hot. And also we have some drier air moving in on the backside of Debby as well. We may not be feeling as much of that lower humidity, but with that drier air, that is really limiting how much rain we're going to get over the next few days. The thing too about Debby is it's barely moving at all. It's going to crawl up the Carolinas over the next 48 hours or so. And so we are still going to be stuck in this pattern over the next several days. Day in, day out, you can expect kind of the same old with the extreme heat and the lack of rainfall. So not only do we have that drier air moving in on the backside of Debby, out to the west we have a huge ridge of high pressure. And so we are not the only ones feeling this intense heat. This ridge of high pressure is across the Texas Panhandle. We're seeing it in the Southern Plains. So a lot of areas today feeling the heat, no doubt about that. Anytime we have a big ridge of high pressure like this in the upper levels, we get sinking air. That sinking air warms as it gets closer to the surface, and this area of high pressure is just not going anywhere over the next couple of days. So I know I sound like a broken record, but it's just going to be flat out hot, even for us here in South Mississippi. It's really not too often that even those of us on the coast can be reaching the triple digits. Those are generally our record highs for this time of the year. I put in here the record high for the Gulfport area. That sits at about 99 to 100 over the next 6 to 7 days. Now you may see there that by Sunday and Monday, there's a little hope that we may be a few degrees cooler. Not much of a cool down, but we may get out of the triple digits at this point, or that point. Today, Wednesday, Thursday, we are expecting actual air temperatures at 100 or maybe even a few degrees above that. So we're giving those records a run for their money. We could be setting or breaking new records over the next several days. That may not be the case as much as we get into Saturday and Sunday, but even then, forecast highs are going to be in the mid to upper 90s, and that's still incredibly hot. If you're curious, our average high for this time of the year is right around 90 to 91 for Gulfport. Inland areas can always be a little bit warmer because you're farther away from the water, but even these triple digits, that's well above average for us. I know it typically feels like it around here, but to see actual air temperatures get that high, it's not super common. Now I know last year we had a lot of that extreme heat, but hopefully this is not going to be a trend every single summer, but it's shaping out to be pretty hot again this August. And not only is it going to be incredibly hot, we just don't have much rain in the forecast. Not only is that area of high pressure causing it to be hot, but also dry in terms of rainfall. Rain chances tomorrow and Thursday basically slim to none. I think you'll be lucky even if you get 1 or 2 straight showers. Many of us are going to stay completely dry. Now, we may get a little bit more rainfall by Saturday and Sunday this weekend, but we are only keeping that chance at about 20% at this time. Not a lot of rain in the forecast. And so without the cloud cover, we're going to have a lot of sunshine. That's going to make the heat feel even more intense by the afternoon hours especially. And it may seem obvious, but if you're going to be spending much time outside, try to find some shade, maybe limit how much time you're going to spend in the sun. The UV index is considered extreme during this part of the year. So if you have very fair skin, if you're prone to getting sunburns, you can burn in as little as 15 minutes. The sun definitely going to be intense over the next several days. If there's anything of maybe a silver lining, a little bit of some relief from the intense heat, it's that we may have a drop in the humidity by the weekend. I'm a little skeptical of this. Forecast models are hinting that we may see a nice drop in the humidity by the weekend. It really doesn't happen often here in August, so that's why I'm a little skeptical. I'll believe it when I see it. Fingers crossed it actually holds true. At this point though, I'm not getting my hopes up too high, but hey, there's a chance we may see some lower humidity getting into Saturday and Sunday. It's still going to be hot, but with lower humidity, it may make it feel a little bit more comfortable. And to be honest, tomorrow and Thursday, the humidity will be a bit lower than what we can get during this time of the year. Dew points in the 60s, low 70s, but it's enough humidity to still make it feel fairly uncomfortable outside. So fingers crossed we can actually get a front to move far enough to the south to give us some relief by Saturday and Sunday. But again, I'm not going to get my hopes up too high because I've seen this happen before where forecast models hint at a front moving through by the middle of August, and it's just pretty difficult for that to happen here along the Gulf Coast. Never say never, but I am a little skeptical at this point. We'll see how forecast models play out once we get into the end of the week. And even though the humidity may be a little bit lower at that point, it's still going to be very hot. That being said, I know it's been incredibly hot, but at least we avoided all of the impacts pretty much from what was Hurricane Debby yesterday when it made landfall. As of right now, it's barely holding on to tropical storm status. It's got winds of 40 miles per hour as of 1 o'clock, barely moving to the east and northeast. And that's causing huge issues along the East Coast today and likely again tomorrow, maybe even into Thursday, as the system just stalls nearby. It doesn't really have much of an upper level wind to work with, those steering currents. That's why it's just kind of still sitting there along the east coast. Now, eventually, by the weekend, a trough or a dip in the jet stream will finally scoop the remnants of Debby up and it will be moving out of the way. But at least through, I would say, Thursday, maybe even into Friday, looks like Debby is just not going anywhere. There's a chance it could strengthen a little bit more if the center of circulation goes back over open water. If it stays over land, it's going to weaken in terms of its winds, but if it's able to move back over water a little bit, it could potentially strengthen just a little bit more. We don't expect it to strengthen back into a hurricane, but it could become a stronger tropical storm. But regardless of the wind speed, the rain is still going to be a huge issue. And this is additional rainfall expected from what they've already picked up in parts of Georgia and South Carolina. Some spots in South Carolina, North Carolina may be picking up an additional 5 to 10 inches of rainfall, 3 to 5 inches of rain more so for those areas surrounding it. But some spots have already picked up 10 to 20 inches of rain, so additional rainfall clearly is going to be causing more issues. For us, it is a very different story. We have drier air on the backside of that system, and so I would say at the very most, we're going to see upwards of 1/4 of an inch of rain over the next 5 to 6 days. And that's if you're lucky. Most of us are not even going to see rain. So it makes sense that those areas on the East Coast have a high risk of flash flooding today. Even up into New England today, they also have a little front that may be trying to move through. That's why those areas are highlighted in that green, yellow, and red color. They also have a chance of seeing some rainfall up into the mid-Atlantic and maybe even parts of New England, but definitely noticing that bullseye around the Carolinas for that higher chance of flash flooding. So Debby, not our problem, but it's still sticking around the East Coast, causing some significant impacts to the U.S. Elsewhere in the tropics, we are watching another tropical wave that's moving through the Caribbean right now. Development chances with this are on the low end at this point. We've got that chance at about 10% over the next 2 days. Conditions may become a little bit more favorable over the next 5 to 7 days as it moves into the Western Caribbean, maybe even into the southern Gulf of Mexico. But a lot of unknowns at this time with where exactly this may go, how much it's going to develop. It's just really too early to give any details on that. And at this point, with it not even being developed, forecast models, not too helpful at this time. Now, with it having a chance of moving into the Gulf of Mexico, rest assured we will closely monitor this. It may not even move into the Gulf by the next 5 days or so. It may not be until the weekend or even early next week that we could see it even getting close to the Gulf Coast. So a lot of time to monitor this system. We'll keep you posted as if anything changes, and it's always best to be on guard, especially for this time of the year into September and October, where we typically see tropical activity pick up a little bit more. So all in all, tropics, not too much of a concern this week, but the heat definitely is. We're forecasting a high today of 100 in Gulfport at the airport. We're already very close to that. It seems like we've already set a new record high for Moss Point and Pascagoula. Last I checked, they were still sitting at 100. We're going even a little bit hotter, believe it or not, for Wednesday and Thursday with highs at 101. Keeping that high at 100 for Friday. Maybe there's a little hope that we'll knock those temperatures down a bit this weekend, and maybe there's a little hope for lower humidity. We'll see if that cold front can make it all the way far enough to the south to give us some lower humidity, but that's pretty hard to do for the middle of August. So don't get your hopes up too high at this point. We'll let you know if we think that's actually going to pan out. Lots of sun in the forecast over the next several days. I wouldn't count on much rain over the next several days as well. Things are looking dry. If your yard needs a little water, you may have to get the sprinkler system going. And you know what, maybe even have the kids run through the sprinklers because that'll feel better than being out in this intense sunshine. We're still not going to be cooling down much at night either. Looking at temperatures in the upper 70s and low 80s on the coast. If you live farther inland, you will be able to drop back down into the mid 70s. But there's just not much more to it other than it is going to be incredibly hot over the next few days. Chances are we're going to be setting some new records, tying some of those previous records. There's no doubt about it. It is just going to stay incredibly hot. Maybe by October or November we'll finally start to cool down a little bit more, but for the time being, hopefully your AC is working well in your home and your car. Check in on some neighbors if you know that they may be struggling with having a chance to cool down. If you need a place to cool down, the mall is a great option. The public libraries around here are a great option to cool down during the afternoons. So hopefully everybody can stay cool out there. I'm going to sign off. We will have the latest forecast and the latest on the tropics coming up at 4 o'clock at WLOX. So for the time being, hopefully everyone can stay cool.